Cool. So this is Lunatic Studios here in Barcelona. I've been here for about 2 years. The space is shared with about 16 other artists. Come on in. So this is my space. I actually share this with 2 other artists, Teeny being the main foundation of this studio. So shout out Teeny. The space is sort of arranged in a way where you have sort of drums on the right, melodic synths on the left, and everything sort of stacked on top of each other in this beautifully chaotic way. All right, cool. Yes, let's talk about what is actually happening here. First off is everything is being sent through this Outboard mixer, which is quite nice. I used to never write music this way, and I feel like having an Outboard mixer as your main sort of like signal flow ending point really changes the way you write music, or changed the way that I wrote music. It definitely takes the mouse pointing out of things, where you can use the mixer as an instrument itself. So if you're noticing, I'm bringing things in and out, EQing with the 4-band EQs up here. There's also 2 channel effects sends that are constantly being sent to the main effects rack, which is right here. You have a nice little Shiftman sort of filter modulator, which is absolute chaos, the classic Eventide DSP 4000, and then this really cool, which is sort of like the glue to my effects send is this Zoom Studio 1201, and it was designed originally as a karaoke effects unit. And I find it really fun to use just the basic sort of dimension, reverb, and delay algorithms in here to send anything from vocals, synths, drum buses. Okay, so let's see how these effects sends actually work. So we're loading in a few channels of audio from the rack case right here, which is split between a channel mixer, the original bass station, Super JV, just like a roll-in sound module, Rompler style sound machine, and this really cool EMU percussion. And this is also sort of has its own effects send, which is this Yamaha FX 770, which is a nice like guitar distorter. Among other effects, you have some sort of delays, reverbs. Not traditionally used for synthesizers, which I find a lot of use in club music is taking a synth used for one thing or an effect unit used for one thing and doing the exact opposite with it. So we can hear what we're listening to is bass station, Super JV, again sort of this kind of like guitar stabby sound that I use quite often, percussion, all together. Now we can hear what this effects send does to that rack. We're sort of spreading the sound wider as well as subtle phasing from the Zoom rack. We can even do the same to the 909 drums. Just really subtle phasing, we'll tone it back down again. Just gives the 909 a little bit more character. We have the bass line coming from the Energizer. Bass line, one of my favorite pieces in the actual studio, is made by a company from 1996 called Orgon Systems. The original was released in the mid-90s. I think something around only 300 units were made. A Swedish designer came in under the branding of Silver Machines and did a reboot, clone essentially of the original circuit. I love it. It's a 3-voice mono synth, even make it scream at some points, which I really enjoy. It has a separate sub-bass output. And then we have the 909, the 808 is coming in for just top layer hi-hat action. Here's some of the mid and high toms as well. The 808 is actually a clone as well by DinSync, which I built myself over many hours during COVID. As close to the original as you can get. This is a really interesting piece that I sort of have been trying to add to the studio for some years. The Ensoniq EPS series, this is the rack mount. It's an amazing sampler, 8-channel track sampler. I think for getting as classic of crunchy sort of bit degrading samples, this is what you would use, and the way you can push the saturation on the outputs sort of gives it its color. But what's even more interesting about this is the fact that I have a massive sample library here from a very well-known techno producer under the name of DJ Bone. All the copies say Bone on them, you can see here. And I found this collection on eBay saying sort of vintage EPS and Sonic sample library. I messaged the guy directly and asked, because all the floppies had Bone written over them. I was like, okay, this might actually be, you know, the DJ Bone. So I messaged them and said, hey, is this by chance DJ Bone's sample library? And they said, it's funny you say that because a guy from Detroit came down to sell us his collection. So I messaged Bone directly, no reply. So if you want your sample library back, come find me. And I use this sort of religiously on all my tracks. Another amazing piece of kit is, of course, the Juno 106, which doesn't really need an introduction, but I will mention that this specific unit, because of its age, which a lot of the earlier Juno models had, was a noisy chorus circuit from factory. And I think when you bought this, you know, decades ago, you probably thought this was a fault of the factory itself, but I find it to give quite a lot of character to the synth. In the same rack as the Ensoniq, the Microwave XT, I don't think Waldorf goes without mention in my music because it's been a huge proponent of the sound that I've stuck with. So a fun fact about Waldorf is on one of the Microwave rack units that I used to own, there was a patch named Liquid Earth, which essentially birthed my artist name, Liquid Earth, which I find quite funny because this is like a full circle moment of me using the synths and now touring with a name based off a preset on the original Microwave. So this is the Moog Spectravox, which has had a recent place in the studio. It's quite interesting because it could be used as a vocoder, which I don't use it as, or a sort of like noise step circuit. Yeah, quite nice. Very tricky to pinpoint, but I feel like most great synths take a bit of effort to play around with. The Mini Nova, which I feel is especially great for punchy, proggy sounds. It has an internal vocoder. It is the glue of the studio. Really, if you're missing a sound in a certain track, I feel like going to this synth helps polish things off a bit. And then this is the Eurorack, which I've had for some years. It became an obsessive hobby during COVID. I don't use it as much as I should. It sort of just like sits in the back of the studio as this functional art piece. But I do love it, and I would love to get back into creating more textured stuff with it. Yeah, unfortunately it doesn't get a lot of love now, but I will never sell it. Okay, yeah, that about wraps up most of the gear in my studio. I appreciate you tuning in, and if you ever want to reach out to me directly, shoot a DM. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. If you want me to elaborate on the gear I have in the studio or my creative process, I'm always pretty open to sharing my experiences and advice.